Event Maniacs, presented by the Juice Box.
The main event can make or break a show. It doesn't matter how good the undercard is. If the main event is a stinker, the entire card and event could be tainted.
Here on Main Event Maniacs, we will revisit some of the most memorable main events in sports and entertainment history, good and bad, across various promotions and eras of professional wrestling. I'm Jay, and happy to be joined by the Jesse to my gorilla, good friend and co-host Brian. Brian, what's up, man? Excited to get this thing started here and talk about Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant from WrestleMania 3.
Yes, I'm excited about it as well. Man, this is one of my earliest memories as far as being pumped for a WrestleMania goes, was Hogan Andre. It's really the first big main event that I was really a fan during the time of, right?
Yeah.
And we mentioned this in our opening broadcast that, you know, this is really the one main event that made main events, right? Before that, it was the last match on the card that went throughout the circuit. And as we'll get into here, this did not do the circuit at all. The only place you could see this was on pay-per-view or live in person at the Pontiac Silverdome in Detroit, Michigan. That was
man. Yeah. I mean, it's such a memory, I think, for every wrestling fan, no matter your age. You've seen clips of this, you've heard references to it. And I mean, let's be honest, Hulk Hogan's never been shy about telling his own history and retelling it in various forms
and changing
years.
It and making shit up.
I mean, I think Andre's weight goes up and the number of muscles he tears in his back goes up every time he retells this, but for good reason. This was a cementing watershed moment in professional wrestling because as we'll talk about, they really crossed a barrier with this in so many ways, and in a lot of ways spent years chasing this high again, and sometimes hitting it, sometimes not. And we talk about that down the line, how many times we think WWE has done this, but this changed it for everybody, man. AWA, WCCW, NWA, WCW, everybody else after this main event said, no, we have to have that kind of match to finish our set, because like you said, the main event was something that toured through the area. So unless by chance you caught papers from some other place or had a friend on the inside that would phone you on a corded phone and tell you, you didn't know, you didn't know what went on, or unless they told you on one of the television shows. And there weren't that many of those in those days. And I mean, we're way pre-internet, of course, and all of that. There were a few wrestling publications, but yeah, it's so wild to think about a time in 1987 when this happened and how it just changed the game forever. And the fact that it happened in our lifetime when we were both coming up watching this stuff. I mean, I said before, I looked like WWF to me was like the big cartoon, kind of wrestling, which I was down for. I was cool for that. And, Hulk Hogan was someone that I was aware of because I saw Rocky 3 early. So I knew who Thunder Lips was, baby, and I mean, that put him on the map in a different way too. And it put wrestling on a map in a different way. And that experience changed a lot about the way Hogan did matches too. He understood what a 3-act structure in an action movie looked like, or a sports movie looked like. And as we'll talk about, that became a big template for a lot of his work going forward.
Absolutely. Let's get started with the build up here to this match, Jay. It starts with the WWF switching over from 1986 to 1987. In 1986, WrestleMania 2 was headlined by King Kong Bundy and Hulk Hogan in a steel cage match. Now, Hogan was battling a lot of the Heenan family at this time. He would go on a team up with a gentleman by the name of Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, several times taking on Bundy and Studd. This feud took a shocking twist, though, as Paul Orndorff turned on Hogan and joined the Heenan family. Orndorff and Hogan proceeded to headline arenas all over the United States and Canada, with the huge match taking place in Toronto in front of 70,000 fans. A large gate at the time, for sure. This match took place on August 28th in 1986. The two had continued to headline shows, with the blow-off taking place finally in December of 1986.
Yeah, man, and I think it's important to let our fans know, too, the Heenan family, Bobby Heenan's stable of wrestlers, this was what you now would think of as Judgment Day, Bloodline, all of that kind of stuff, the Bullet Club. Pre all of that, Bobby Heenan was the king of heel managers. No offense to Jim Cornette, who's also great, or was great as a manager, but Bobby Heenan was on a different level, and he could get so much heat on guys, and it's no wonder that Hogan would square off against his dudes. I mean, you got to have your big hero going up against the big villains.
Absolutely. That steel cage match I mentioned would take place on Saturday night's main event and air in January of 1987. It's a memorable match. It was the one where Hulk Hogan and Paul Orndorff both touched feet at the same exact time, escaping the cage,
yes, I remember
causing
that.
Hogan to keep the title, Orndorff thinking he won the title. It was a really good, well-done match, and it's not the last time the WWF used the same move again and again. Meanwhile, Andre the Giant was donning a mask and went by the name Giant Machine in a battle against Bundy and Studd. The machines were kind of put together because Andre was suspended by the WWF. Not sure exactly why he was suspended, but he was, and because of that, he covered his face and wrestled with these machines. Now, one of those machines would go on to be Axe of Demolition. The other one was I believe, what was he? Shit.
I don't remember.
Blackjack.
Blackjack Mulligan. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Did it back.
Yeah. The other one would be Blackjack Mulligan, who would go back to his gimmick after the machines kind of disappeared, so to say.
Can I talk about how ridiculous it is that they think putting a mask on Andre the Giant is going to hide who he was? The guy was so much bigger than anybody.
That was the best part, because Bobby Heenan kept trying to tell everyone that was Andre the Giant in the mask, and the fans obviously knew it was, but nobody, the commentators would be like, I don't know, I can't tell. I mean, he's pretty big. It could be Andre, but we just can't tell because of the mask. It was a funny storyline, right, for Andre to do.
Yeah.
It was. And so that went on, and eventually Andre would be reinstated and machines would then disappear. In January of 1987, Andre's health was steadily worsening, and McMahon wanted to give him a big payday as a thank you for the years of service and loyalty that he provided to not just him, but also his father. That payday would come in the main event of WrestleMania 3 against longtime friend and foe, believe it or not, Hulk Hogan, for the World Heavyweight Championship. The build-up was supposed to see Andre as a face teaming with Hogan and with Hogan against Macho Man and the Honky Tonk Man, but Andre didn't show up for his matches because of his health problems, and most of the time he would be replaced by Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, who, as we know, would go on to have one of the best WrestleMania matches ever at WrestleMania 3 against the Macho Man.
Oh yeah, one of my favorites of all time, and I'm a big Steamboat mark to this day. And what's wild is there are guys today who will talk about they watched that match and take notes from it all these years later.
Oh, yeah.
That tells you everything you need to know.
Absolutely. At a televised event at Madison Square Garden, Andre finally reappeared after Hulk Hogan successfully defended his title. Andre picked up the belt and handed it to Hogan, but gave it a nice look before doing so and then leaving the ring. Fans and Hogan were a little bit baffled by what Andre had just done. The WWF would use their successful Piper's Pit platform to build the story even further, as Hulk Hogan was presented with a large trophy for being the WWF champion for 3 years. And you got to remember, at this time, the WWF champions had really long reigns before this, and the Hogan's really was the last of the long reigns that you would see in the WWF ever again. You don't get that until Roman Reigns recently.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he really reinstated that. It was rare to get more than a few months and stuff. And we should also mention here inside of this, Roddy Piper on Piper's Pit was another easy way to draw heat if you needed.
Absolutely.
Because he was charisma infused with 1,000 watts.
Absolutely. Andre came out to shake his best friend's hand, and Hogan later remarked how the handshake felt a bit too firm. The next week on Piper's Pit, Andre was presented with a smaller trophy for being the only undefeated wrestler in wrestling history, to which Hogan came out to congratulate the Giant, but instead decided to speak mostly about himself, causing Andre to walk off the set. Then the following week, Roddy Piper wanted a meeting between Hogan and Andre to figure out what was going on, so on Piper's Pit, the scene was set. Hogan and Piper opened the segment when Andre was introduced. He appeared with Bobby the Brain Heenan by his side. Instant heat. Heenan stated that Hogan was only friends with Andre because he didn't want to have to defend his championship against him, since he knew he would lose that match. Of course, Hogan denied the accusation, but Andre then shocked the world by challenging Hulk Hogan to a World Heavyweight title match at WrestleMania 3. Hogan, distraught, repeatedly told himself that it wasn't true before Heenan had Andre leave a strong message that it was, and Andre tore off Hogan's shirt and cross necklace. Piper humorously commented on the fact that Hogan was bleeding as Andre walked away. The following week, Hogan appeared once again on Piper's pit to answer the challenge. After much pacing and prodding from Piper, Hogan let out a yes heard round the world, and the match was set. A couple weeks later, a contract signing aired, with Hogan accusing Andre of betraying him and their friendship. Heenan again reiterated that Hogan used their so-called friendship to avoid facing Andre for the belt, and Andre told Hogan that he didn't show him all the tricks he knew, and that he would use his knowledge to defeat Hogan at WrestleMania. The match was set.
What a setting it was, and they picked a great place. We're now here to talk about the scene. The Pontiac Silverdome, a.k.a. the Silverdome, opened in 1975, Pontiac, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. Seating capacity of 82,000 plus, the largest stadium in the NFL until FedEx Field in 1997 surpassed it. The Detroit Lions played their home games there, obviously, from the NFL. The NBA's Detroit Pistons played there up until 1988 when they built the Palace for them. WrestleMania 1 had been in Madison Square Garden in New York City, so that's a venue WWF, WWE utilizes to this day. It's especially grown with the years of the promotion, but it was like their home base, outside of Connecticut. Madison Square Garden is home for WWE stuff. WrestleMania 2 was bold because they went on a Monday night, and they were in 3 locations: Nassau Veterans Memorial in Uniondale, also a place that you'll see a lot in WWF history, the Rosemont Harassment in Rosemont, Illinois, and then the Los Angeles Memorial Sports Arena in LA. So a bold experiment, but wasn't something that they wanted to repeat for number 3. Didn't have the same capacity. So now here's the fun part, Brian. The WWF has claimed forever that the paid attendance for this was 93,173. They give that number all the time. It's a live indoor event record that would stand until the 2010 NBA All-Star Game of 108,713 held in Cowboy Stadium. Oh, you're not going to do it? I thought you were going to do it. So,
Not on this podcast.
Okay. Is that number real? Who's to say? Because it's one of those things that gets repeated so frequently, it just became fact, And some folks who worked for WWF at the time have claimed that the actual number is probably around 78,000. Either way, WrestleMania 1 was in front of about 19,000 and change in the Garden, which is good. WrestleMania 2's combined audiences were over 40,000. This beat both of those combined, hands down. And then you factor in the nearly 1 million fans watching this on closed circuit locations around the country, and an audience for pay-per-views estimated to be in multiples of millions, because people would gather in groups and watch it at bars and restaurants, things like that. It was the largest audience for sports entertainment in history at that point. And the WWF and Vince McMahon, the ownership, and everybody running the show at the time knew they could not blow this. They had to get this, and they had this incredible card set. Your announced team was Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse the Body Ventura. Brian, I don't know about you personally, my favorite announced team of all time. Amazing chemistry. I don't know if there's a heel color commentator who ever put over more talent than Jesse did. Maybe Heenan, but it's close.
Yeah, for me, it's Heenan and Gorilla. Those two, to me, beat Jesse and Gorilla out. I love Jesse and Gorilla. They're absolutely fantastic. They're the soundtrack to my youth, But Heenan was... The guy had the greatest ability to just come up with one-lines in an instant. And he, throughout his career, whether he was managing, whether he was a wrestler in his early days, or whether he was a commentator, was the most entertaining guy on the show. And so for me, Heenan and Gorilla, they had a great chemistry together, and I have to go that way.
They will, but I got to tell you, Jesse always was good, especially at riling up the faces. Pukamania, Gorilla, I can't stand it, And I just love his whole thing. It's
the
funny. They're both great. Yeah, exactly. They have a good time together, and it's a great, excuse me, It's a great crowd, and they're going to show that crowd a lot. Now, the match card had 12 matches, including 2 title bouts. And we've already talked about the Intercontinental Championship between Macho Man, Randy Savage, and Ricky Dragon Steamboat. It's an incredible match. Go watch that one as you're going to watch this one too, folks. That one's worth checking out. Scores of wrestlers still cite that one today. But the big event for that one is Hogan and Andre. And one of the storylines, and you talked about it in your setup there, was that Andre hadn't lost in over a decade. Was that, I mean, I know wrestling is prescribed and all that kind of stuff, but was that true? Had Andre not lost a match in that long?
Well, it's close to true, but Andre did lose 4 WWF matches between 1984 and 1985. One was actually by pinfall, but it was a tag team match, and I don't believe Andre was the one pinned. The other 3 were disqualifications, and then, of course, you got to include a multitude of battle royals in which he didn't win. He was the king of battle royals, right? He usually won, but there were quite a few that he didn't win. In the WWF, that was run by Vince Sr., he only had 1 match he didn't win, and it again was a tag team match, and that one went to a draw. So if you combine everything with the WWF for they claim 15 years undefeated, right, in the WWF, it's close. It's 4 matches, but he had lost quite a few matches in his career. There were lots of them. I could go through them, but I'll save the time. You can look it up. He had lost, I think, a grand total in his career up until this point, around 20 matches, which isn't many. You're talking 1971 to 1987, so that's pretty good.
And it's believable too. I mean, one, his size, his strength, and when you see Andre in this match, realize, folks, you're seeing the end of Andre the Giant.
Yeah.
You know, you're not seeing what he really was in the 60s and 70s. And for a guy his size, he could move. And he does a couple of things in this match that really just blow me away. We'll talk about one spot in particular that I'm like, I don't know how he got that leg up that high to do that. But because he didn't do it again. But that dude, he could put on the show when he needed to. And this is also a star-studded event. You know, WWF had realized we got to bring out the celebrities. And they'd already kind of done that way. I had Mr. T and, you know, the first WrestleMania. Who was, you know, an athlete, but was also really an actor. He was known for the Rocky situation, all that stuff, and A-Team and all that. Well, this time they bring out Bob Uecker, Mr. Baseball, years before he would become the infamously quotable Harry Dole in the Major League movies, and Mary Hart from Entertainment Tonight and all this stuff, because anything NBC Universal and WWF are still tied together to this day. It's why it's on Peacock right now before it goes to Netflix. I remember too these golf cart looking things that they would bring the guys to the ring on. It's almost like a little mini ring on their way to center stage. You know, Andre, of course, no music needed, accompanied by Bobby the Brain Heenan. You mentioned he had joined Heenan's stable earlier, in line with the heel faction that Hogan's already odds with. Billed at 525 pounds for the match. Andre's the only guy in the promotion that can make a 6'8", 300-pound Hulk Hogan look like a normal-sized dude. And of course, Joey Morello, the referee, looks like a kid next to both of them, and he's like a normal-sized guy. He's like 6'2". But Hogan, of course, the electric entrance, and what killed me, man, the Real American music, you know, the song is blasting, but you can barely hear it for a minute because the crowd is so electric. And knowing something about live sports broadcasting, having done a little bit of it in my life, good crowd mics can sell something on a television broadcast. It's important to have that because you want your people at home to feel like they're there. And I gotta say this, the way they directed this match and the way it's shot and stuff like that, it's really well done. Everything, the scene is set to see this gladiator match in the middle. You got Hogan oiled up and buff as ever, Andre in his most menacing presence, and they're about to ring the bell on what will become an absolute classic.
Yeah, and you know, it's not the greatest match in the world if you look at it from a
technically standpoint. Absolutely not.
Yeah,
no,
but it was awesome. The crowd was eating everything up. The way that they worked it with Hogan and Andre was just so expertly done. You know, the best thing that they did was right away have Hogan, you know, go after Andre, punch, and try to lift him right away, and then have Andre pretty much beat him in the middle of the ring, except for Hogan just barely escaped with the arm up, and the ref said it was a 2, and Andre's saying it was a 3, and everyone's just like, was that 3? No, that was only 2, and that was the perfect way to set this match up. Like, Andre can beat you in a minute if he wants to. Hogan learns that right away. And then it would go on to be about 3-4 minutes of Andre just pummeling the crap out of Hulk Hogan before Hogan would get a couple more moves in and then again start to get beat up again. This match was Hogan just taking a whooping from Andre for the better part of the whole thing.
And that's what you want in your face against the massive heel match. The face has got to screw something up early, go for something that doesn't work, and they got to take a beating, because that's what happens in a good 3-act structure. The hero starts off, we get introduced, we're excited about it, and then it all goes to hell in Act 2, and they barely escape before coming back. And the thing that got me about this, man, is, and these guys knew each other really well, so they knew what to do. They were laying it in on each other, buddy. Like, them chops were hitting home. Those forearms those were thick. Like, and
you could see the sweat just flying off of Andre as Hogan chopped them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even Hogan, he always drenched out quick anyway. But that mullet became a skullet wet real quick. And when Andre hits you, buddy, you knew it. You could hear them smacking each other. Again, I go to the ring mics are in perfect position. You just feel it laying in. And Gorilla and Jesse are doing exactly what they're supposed to do. They're painting the picture. They're going along with it, but they're also letting the match play. And the thing that I didn't remember is how long this went on. This goes over about 12 minutes. I used to think it was like a 5-minute match. Right. But it's not. It goes on a good while for these guys.
It does. And, they did it perfectly, because the whole point going into this was that Hogan, there's no way he can beat this guy. Nobody can beat Andre the Giant. He's huge, and Hogan has no chance. And he took a whooping the whole match. And I really enjoyed the fact that when they were on the outside, you heard both Jesse and Gorilla saying, "I hope this doesn't end in a countout. Nobody wants to see a countout end." And yet they still sat out there and they beat each other up. And Andre takes a headbutt to the ring post, and Hogan tries to then pile drive Andre the Giant onto the open boards underneath the mats, and of course there's no way he can't lift him. He's not going to pick him up.
Can't even get his arms around him.
Right. And what I thought was interesting, you could see Joey Morello was counting normally, and then he just kind of slowed down, and then of course Bobby Heenan, he goes over to argue with Bobby Heenan to interrupt that count as well. They just did a really good job with that. And really enjoyed watching this match again. There were things I forgot. I totally forgot all of that outside sequence.
Yeah, it's such good layered storytelling, because you've got the two guys just beating the hell out of each other, and you're sitting there watching the ref try to enforce rules on this impossible situation, and then Heenan is doing his job by making sure that like the crowd is watching that too, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh okay, Heenan's taking care of that. Oh my God, is he trying to pile drive him? And no, that ain't gonna happen, And so I do love though that Jesse calls out Hulk Hogan for like, I was gonna pile drive him with a concrete gorilla. That's cheap, And he loved taking a shot at Hogan and his squeaky clean, all American, eat your vitamins, say your prayers thing, And he was like, no, this guy's just as dirty. And that's the thing, is like every good face will go to dirty tactics when times get desperate. And I think one of the best spots, I teased it earlier, but I'll say it now, when he's running into the corner, looks like he's going to try to clothesline Andre, and Andre gets that big foot up and just clocks him right in the face. And to Hogan's credit, he sells the hell out of it. But Andre getting his leg up that high, that was not something he did. But you could tell it hurt, but he made it work.
Also, I got to say, this is probably the only time ever you saw Andre the Giant roll under the bottom rope.
Right.
I didn't even know he could fit under that, but you watch him get back into the ring, and he rolls under that bottom rope. He's always gone over the top rope entering the ring, and so that was kind of fun to see as well. Now you got to talk a little bit about how this one comes to an end. As Andre, it's right after they're outside, and Andre comes back in, and Hogan hits him with a couple of clotheslines, I think it was, or
couldn't punches. Get him down with them, but
nope. And then Andre falls to the mat, and that's when Hogan gets pumped up, and Andre gets up, gets the slam, hits the leg drop, and to everybody's surprise, Hulk Hogan is able to pull out the victory. Unbelievable crowd response. They just went berserk when that happened.
Brian, when he gets him up, and obviously Andre's helping him, because boss man will help you, as he would like to say. When it's time to go, he'll help you. But when he goes over for him for that scoop slam, you can hear the gasp of 78 to 93,000 people in there all at once going, what? Because Hulk Hogan is he's a strong man. He can lift and throw people all over the place, right? But he couldn't do it earlier, and then he summons the will to get him up. And I mean, it looked good too. And plant him through the mat like that. Just the place exploded. And then when he hit that leg drop, it was like, oh, it's over. He's really done it. And I remember as a kid, seeing this and going like, I can't believe he actually slammed him and got him. Because back in those days, man, the Hogan leg drop, that was lights out, baby. You weren't kicking out of that.
Exactly. And, Andre doesn't let anyone just slam him either. Right?
Oh, no.
It's a privilege if he allows you to do that to him. There's only a handful of people who have ever been able to slam Andre the Giant. And you're talking to like legends like Harley Race. Hulk did it once before, actually, believe it or not, back in Shea Stadium. He allowed Hogan. You got Stan Hansen, who's done it. Yeah. The Wild Samoans, but they did it together as a team, so I don't know if that really counts.
Oh, that counts. You had two guys.
All right. Kamala was allowed to body slam Andre the Giant, believe it or not. That's a big one. And then, of course, Antonio Inoki.
Yeah, well, and like Heenan said, if Andre liked you and he liked working with you, he would work with you. Boss Man would let you get one. And and it was even though Andre wasn't the champion, it was a big passing of the torch. And Hogan has said that through the years. He's, as we've got to make fun of that he tells his own story 100 different ways, but he's remained consistent about what that meant for him, and he appreciated it because it was a big deal for Andre to sort of put him over like that.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Hogan likes to fabricate things a lot with this match. One of my favorites, besides the fact that he tore every muscle in his back.
He broke every bone in his body.
Didn't miss a single show, right?
Yeah, of course
my
not.
favorite is that he claims that he asked Andre, what are we going to do, boss? What are we going to do, boss? And he said, don't worry about it. I'll take care of you, right? Because he claims he didn't know if Andre was going to let him win the match or if Andre was going to go into business for himself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then he says that on the day of the show, he got this note in his locker room, and it was the whole match laid out by Andre. And so he knew what was supposed to happen the whole match, and if anything deviated, he knew he was in trouble. But it went off exactly as Andre had written it out. Whatever.
Heels calling the match is
that's one
common
thing. Writing the match out.
Probably not. I bet Andre said you're gonna try to slam me early. It's not gonna happen. I'm gonna put the heat on you. You're gonna get a little back. I'm gonna big boot you. We're gonna go outside. I'm gonna backdrop you. We'll roll back in. You'll try to get me down. You'll finally get me down with a clothesline. Then when I get up, slam, we go home. And I bet you that's how that really went down. And then as Hogan again elaborates his history, it becomes a novel written for him, a love letter with flowers and a bottle of wine.
It's like this 3-page note of everything that's going to happen in that match. And it went exactly word for word as it happened. And that's one of my favorites that he came
that is funny. But no, I do love the fact, though, and I have no doubt, when Hogan got out of that, he was incredibly sore. Like when he took a pummeling, and you don't pick up anything that heavy, even help or not, and it doesn't pull, strain. Yeah, you need some ibuprofen, bro. Like that's gonna be a rough night in Detroit. But they pulled off an unreal show, and then the crowd just explodes at the end. It's a great celebration. Hogan's got the belt. It's all the stuff that we've come to expect at the end of a Hulk Hogan match. But what we got to remember is this really started all of that for him, the way he would win and go over like that and stuff. And it was a really fun time. We have a section here called Fantasy Rebooking, and I want to ask, is there anything you would change about the way the match worked out?
Man, for this one, I don't think so. I think they did it so well and so perfectly. I can't think of anything they could have done that would have made it better. Right? They just did. This was perfect as far as a match goes for what you wanted to do and what you had planned for this to go down as. I don't think I could change anything on this one.
But Brian, for my money, you can't stage this any better. For these two guys and the way they like to or even had to work back in those, it plays out well. It still works today. Like, it's a 3-act structure like a movie. Hogan goes for the slam, doesn't work. Andre beats the crap out of him, dishes out a ton of punishment. Just when you think the hero's beat, he finds strength, comes back, he gets that slam, the leg drop, 1, 2, 3. Can't script it any better than that. It's the template they still use. Hogan used it forever in his career, up really till the NWO days when that really started to change. And it still works today, man. So I can't really fantasy rebook any of it. I like all of it.
Yeah, there's no way you can. It's just for this particular match, it is exactly what it needed to be.
Yeah. And then the aftermath. I mean, as we've said, this cemented Hulk Hogan as the guy in the business. Andre would obviously take some time off, his health continuing to fail. He would continue to wrestle mostly in tag team situations going forward. Hogan would defend the title against Harley Race, Hercules, the One-Man Gang, and a lot of time with the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. That would be sort of his next big opponent to mess with. Andre would actually win, quote unquote, the title off Hogan at the main event. Hogan's shoulders weren't down, though. You know, we'd still do that spot to this day, ending Hogan's near 4-year reign. And Andre then would proceed to hand over the title to DiBiase because DiBiase couldn't beat Hogan on his own, so he paid for somebody to do it for him. That was DiBiase's character. But, of course, Jack Tunney would come out, vacate all that, and set up the tournament that culminated in WrestleMania 4. Hogan and Andre would have a rematch on that card, but it ended in a double DQ when they used the steel chair in front of Joey Morella. So Macho Man Randy Savage would ultimately pin $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase for the title. Hogan would get an assist in there to make sure there wasn't interference. Hogan and Savage would team up, form the Mega Powers that would eventually explode and led to Hogan winning that title back at WrestleMania 5. But all that perhaps is another story for another day on Main Event Maniacs. We're at Final Bell. Brian, final thoughts on Hogan versus Andre WrestleMania 3.
Man, this was everything as a kid. And at this time, 1987, I was a 8-year-old kid just loving wrestling, loving Hulk Hogan, and this was everything I wanted it to be as an 8-year-old kid, and it's everything I wanted to be as a now 45-year-old guy, right? I watched this match again and was just enthralled with it. It still catches my eye. Is it the greatest match in the world? Absolutely not, but it is one of the greatest main events that has ever been.
Yeah, Brian, I was 10-year-old Jay watching this, and it was everything 10-year-old me wanted it to be. And now as 47-year-old me watching this again this week, I just went back to the future, man. I hit my little mental DeLorean, and I was just that kid watching this on that big clamshell VHS I finally got to watch it on, and just sucking it all up. And at one point, I realized I had stopped writing down any notes or anything. I was just watching the match, and I just let it go. And then I went back and watched it again to, scant down a few things I wanted to talk about, because that's how well it was put together. And it became the template for what a main event needed to be, where it needed to take people. And every promotion, again, has built their main events off of this moment. I think we both agree on that. And sometimes they've overachieved it. They've shot beyond it. They beat it. But this is, in the top end, like Mount Rushmore of main events for pro wrestling. I don't think you can get a bigger one than this, and one again that led to everything we know and love about the business now started with this match. So, man, it was so fun to go back and think about it here on this show, and really our inaugural voyage of the Main Event Maniac show here on the Juice Box. So big shout out to our buddy Juice Springsteen for letting us do this. It's a lot of fun. Of course, you can follow Juice on Twitter X at Juicy Steen, Instagram Juicy Wrestling Closet, and of course subscribe on YouTube to Juicy Steen. This podcast is on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, all those. If you can, leave a rating and a review. Appreciate Juice again for letting us be a part of this, and he thanks you for all the support as well. Brian, any final thoughts as we wrap it all up here, man?
No, man, I'm looking forward to the next ones we do. I'm looking forward to reliving some of these seminal moments in my wrestling fandom, both good and bad, for sure, because we've got some fun stuff on our list that we're going to cover. And of course, obviously, if anyone wants to hear anything else, just drop a DM to one of us, and we'll try and add it to our list of things we want to cover as well. But I think we've got a pretty solid list of main events that we're going to talk about in the future.
Yes, and we will be fast forwarding into the very near future for future episodes, and then we'll bounce around a lot. We're not just going to stick to one time frame, and you may see some of the same superstars repeated over and over because, let's face it, main eventers are main eventers. I mean, there's a history of these guys, but we're going to try to hit a little bit of everybody and hit our way across all the promotions that you know and love. So it's going to be WWF, WWE, WCW. You're going to get some TNA. You're going to get some ROH in there. We're going to do some ECW, which for Brian and I will be kind of new because we weren't huge fans or followers of that promotion. So we may have to have a guest or two on for that. And then we're even going to hit up some AEW stuff because even though they've only been around 5 years or so, they're doing some pretty exciting stuff. And what looks like is coming on the horizon is going to be some pretty solid main event stuff. And like we said in the intro, we're going to hit the good and the not so good too. And not just to drag it through the mud and pick it apart, but to try to figure out where did it miss and how could it have been different and what it meant. Because the thing about all of these is that each one of them has changed the course of the business and the storyline as it happens. It's like your favorite television show when they kill off a character and then all of a sudden go like, ooh, how do we resurrect that person?
Yes, definitely. So if you want to follow me or Jay, you can do so by following me on Twitter at BrianThomas878. Jay, what's your Twitter?
I'm Jay Ran here.
All right, so you can hit us up on either of those on Twitter if you want to give us a suggestion maybe, or just comment on this episode. Love to hear from y'all.
Thank you for joining us on the Juicebox Presents Main Event Maniacs. For Brian, I'm Jay. Until next time, this has been your main event.
That was The Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to The Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.